For all the characters JJK has seen come and go, a good majority of its first half, there's a focus on the three characters of Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara. Together they have a nice and entertaining dynamic as friends and seem to be the main group the story will follow. That is until partway through the first half of this story's opening that a clear divide in growth comes between these three. At the core of JJK, strength is what pushes characters forward in this world of sorcery. The strong fight and survive while the weak die in the mud. Following this idea, the Goodwill event sees Yuji achieve the Black Flash, pushing him towards the strong but also pushing him beyond both of his friends in a short amount of time, with Nobara in particular falling off the fastest of the three. A good example of this is the fight against the death paintings. Yuji could outrun Esso's blood technique with Nobara in hand, and later on he is fighting Esso before he syncs with Nobara to land their final attacks. In the manga it makes him feel a little bit more relative in speed, but in the anime Yuji is just going absolutely nuts. It's a cool moment that doesn't make you think about the implications too much. Similarly, Megumi's growth eclipses Nobara's with a domain expansion, albeit with an incomplete domain. This arc firmly places Nobara at the back of the team because she's not growing like the other two are. Hitting a Black Flash is no small feat, but she can't use it basically whenever like Yuji can once he's in the zone. By herself, she can't handle anything on the level of a single death painting. Yuji does the bulk of the damage to both, while she just stalls them long enough to reach the final move. It's definitely a highlight for her character because she gets a standout moment. Unfortunately, she's played for filling a niche in combat. She fills a strong niche, but that doesn't help her much if it doesn't work. This is the weakness of Nobara as a sorcerer, yet no one in the story or herself acknowledged that maybe she could find different ways to evolve her technique, widen its applications, or to improve her reinforcement and output. Could she have learned to use resonance with cursed tools, maybe imbued her cursed energy into arrows like Kamo using hairpin that way? What about her reinforcement and output so she can take attacks while dealing good damage to get a piece of her opponent's skin or whatever to use resonance more consistently? These are very real possibilities for the character, but because the story doesn't go there, she never gets stronger outside of the Black Flash. What she becomes is a one-trick pony with a little versatility. She doesn't excel in a straightforward fight or a drawn-out battle of wits. Nobara is a character pinned to the start of a crossroads without any preference for either path. Her time in Shibuya capitalizes on her lack of growth by limiting her scenes and role in the arc. Despite her temporary death in this arc, she'd received almost nothing of note to send off her character. She fights Haruta, the definitive weakest antagonist in the arc, and loses badly. The same Haruta who couldn't find an opening on a near-dead, low-curse energy reserve, Megumi. Regardless of the damage he's been dealt, there's nothing to suggest he's not capable of beating Nobara even in his beaten state. It might just be a little bit harder of a fight for him than before. She also shows a bit of creativity fighting a nerfed Mahito clone, but it doesn't show much considering it's again a clone from a weakened Mahito who is losing more strength fighting Yuji. Although the loss of cursed energy may be independent from the clone, she still keeps up, but just barely when he's playing around the entire fight. Soon after she dies, getting an entire chapter dedicated to her backstory. The use of Nobara's backstory is a typical pitfall of giving out a character's history before death, which is literally just to attach the audience to the character for sympathy points. What makes this more obnoxious than say Yuji's or Megumi's is that it doesn't gel well with her character. Yuji's history is explored and witnessed firsthand with his grandfather's passing. There's an intimacy alongside that experience. Megumi's desire to save his sister and the way he views her motivates him to get stronger. They serve to inform the next steps in the story for both of them. Kugisaki's backstory informs the character to the point we see her right before she dies. Her growth stops right then and there, left dead in the water. It also doesn't help that her death is strictly in service of another character. Yuji's reaction to her death takes more importance than the death itself because it pushes him to his breaking point, forcing an evolution of his character. It wasn't a matter of how sad or tragic Nobara's death is, it's the effect her death has on other characters. In comparison, Nanami has beaten death once because of Yuji, giving us a fake out using his backstory in the same way Nobara's would be used. The basis of Nanami's character is a deeply conflicted man because he didn't know why he came back to the profession. He left because he couldn't bear the pain that came with it, but one interaction pushed him back in. Naturally, his heart wasn't fully into this line of work, furthering the idea that the world of sorcery is not for the weak-willed or people who have shaky motivation. He's an example of one of the story's messages and is is quite sympathetic for it. His death hurts the readers because we understood his decisions on a much more personal level. His death is a tragedy that instigates Yuji's eventual breakdown, not simply used for it. Nobara is more or less a cherry on top to fully break Yuji. There have been several character moments surrounding her, yes, except none of them build up to this point of her character. This death is more surprising than it is expected. A finish like this leaves her forgotten by the story and power cliffed before and after her reappearance into the narrative. Megumi's handling in this story is a mixed bag. Before the reveal of totality in Max Elephant, there might have been an argument for him being equal to Nobara's strength. However, with these added Shikigami, it makes him the clear number 2 of the group. His performance when Hanami appeared wasn't anything to speak of in comparison to Yuji, who's going blow for blow with the special grade. On the other hand, his fight with the Finger Bearer is one that develops his strength and his character as he breaks through the mental roadblock in his head thanks to Gojo's training. Megumi's incomplete domain is a perfect way to illustrate his position, a competent sorcerer but by no means nearing the peak of his strength. This fight serves as his redemption from the Cursed Womb arc as he finds the strength to be better than what he was before. It's a moment that says Megumi is capable of doing what he thinks at first impression to be impossible. All he has to do is believe that he can. This is the moment he truly established his place in the story. It's the height of his character's growth and strength and where it plateaus. Where the Death Paintings arc saw him find his place, the Shibuya incident uses him as a tool for the narrative. Participating in 3 battles, Megumi is not really involved too much in the arc itself. Fighting Awakasa with Yuji, his intelligence is shown off. For Dagon, he is used as a backdoor to reintroduce Toji to the story, and the following battle with his father is a spectacle at best and maybe just a little bit underwhelming at worst. Although there are clear gripes people may take concerning this fight's ending, the fact Toji asked Megumi for his last name and offs himself so he wouldn't kill his son says more than any personal conversation would. Toji is not an emotionally driven character and Megumi never really cared to know his father. Their relationship isn't meant to be satisfying because what could be said except the bare minimum? It's an excellent piece of characterization that says everything without needing to say anything. Despite his key moments in these fights, there's something off about all of them. None of these fights are about him or advance him in any way. Outside of Awakasa, he's supporting the build-up to someone else's big moments more than not. In summoning Mahoraga, he does this for both Mahoraga and Sukuna. The issue with Mahoraga's introduction is that the technique becomes more important than the character of Megumi from here on out, making what happens to his character in the Culling game sting that much more. For this arc, he only has one fight versus Reggie. This could easily be seen as the weakest fight in the arc that any of the main cast takes part in. Granted, there are some great frames in the fight and its conclusion foreshadows the trials Megumi would endure. The issue is when you compare it to the other fights. Yuji versus Higuruma delves into how 2 people interact after bathing in the darkness of a world they chose to enter. Yuta versus Sendai Colony reintroduces him to the story and shows how far he's come since his days in JJK0. Hakari versus Kashimo is an exploration of 2 new characters, their curse techniques, and builds intrigue for the finale. Maki versus Naoya is her complete transformation into the monster she was meant to be, and her finally overcoming her past. Each of these fights are made to explore the characters in one way or another. Megumi doesn't receive that. There's no new exploration, newly developed abilities, or anything that advances his story in a meaningful direction. It's a fight that makes sense given the circumstances, but holds little to no weight in the end. This moves into Sukuna possessing his body, a decision that seals Megumi away as a tool for Sukuna's resurrection rather than an active character in the story. The reason for this is because the intrigue surrounding how Sukuna would come back, Sukuna's fascination with him, and when Sukuna would fight Gojo are all more important to the story than Megumi's character being active in the story. Just to clarify, building up to a reveal does not necessarily mean that it is a good reveal. It just means that it was foreshadowed to happen so it doesn't feel completely random. This reveal is good in the sense it makes Sukuna an active character in a sensible way, but that is at the cost of the supposed deuteragonist who'd been fading in importance. The ending for Megumi's character is that of a tool so the narrative can advance to its endgame. Up to this point in the story, Megumi's character had felt like a lackluster secondary main character or a facilitator for hype moments that he didn't even take part in. Overall, he felt as though he would be going somewhere during the earlier parts of the story until the Culling games hit and he just completely fell away into the shadow of Sukuna. The final fight seeing Yuji defeat Sukuna thanks to the support of Nobara and Megumi was pretty cool in practice, but poorly done as a finale. Nobara wakes up around 30 minutes prior to Sukuna about to open his domain for the last time on the dot. Megumi's character turns around after one conversation, which is unrealistic after the pit of despair we saw him in prior. These two are relegated to ensuring Yuji doesn't die in the 11th hour when he's been pushed past his limits, playing the support to the main character in the end. Nobara and Megumi were very involved during the beginning half of the story, each receiving their star moments that made everyone fall in love with their characters. As the story moves forward though, they fall off as newer, more important characters take their places. For Megumi, it's Yuta, and for Nobara, it's Maki. By the end of the story, they feel more like scapegoats for the story to happen rather than characters who made the story go the way it did because of their agency in it. That's all I have for you all today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please stay safe out there and have yourselves a damn good one. I'll see you all next time.